Well, Downsview, good morning. Pastor Pete here on the 17th, I believe it is, of May, Friday. Sunday's going to be the 17th, so this will be the 15th. I get my dates all mixed up these days. Things just tend to flow together. Somebody said it's a long weekend this weekend. I thought, well, what's the difference? And I did realize my wife was going to have the Monday off, so that is a good thing. It does make a difference. But you know how these days can just seem to flow together with all of the challenges of restrictions and isolations, which by God's grace seem like we're doing a good job. God has providentially been moving and the curve has been flattened, and some of these restrictions are slowly coming down. Please be safe. Please be smart this weekend. Don't disregard these things, because we have given ourselves diligently to be careful and in caring for each other, full of care. That's the idea of careful. We've been caring for one another, and I pray that even throughout this weekend that we would continue to be smart to see this trend continue and some of these restrictions come down. This morning I'm greeting you from our worship auditorium here at Downsview Baptist, of course. I don't think I've done a touching base here, at least not for some time. I thought it'd be good for us to be reminded of this place. And one of the things that I always think of when I stand at this pulpit is the issue of truth. The Lord Jesus Christ made it very clear that when you trust the Lord Jesus, you are submitting to truth. You're not coming up with your own religious idea. That acknowledging the Lord Jesus Christ is simply an acknowledgement of reality. He is real. This is who he is. This is what he has done. This is what he promised. This is the power he has. These are the instructions that he gives us to live in a way that we really do find legitimate and lasting joy. But where the issue of truth often comes in, friends, is that we will find, especially in times of inconvenience or costly hanging on to the truth, things that cost us to hang on to the truth, it is just all too easy to shave the edges down from the sharpness and precision of truth. To just shave off and smooth down the edges of how things really are, because we're just not sure it would go well for us if we commit to living by and living in light of the truth. And the sad example of that is in 1 Samuel chapter 15. We find ourselves here in our trek through the Bible in the account of King Saul, and where the prophet Samuel, the judge Samuel, has to come and deal with him significantly harshly. You may remember the scene that Saul, as the king, has been told by God to go and rid the countryside of the Amalekites. The Amalekites go all the way back to a king named Amalek, who harassed and made it very difficult for the people of God when the people of God first came into the promised land, into this land of Canaan. And years later, God is saying, the curse of Amalek is not yet dealt with. And so he charges Saul to go and rid the countryside of these people. That hits us a bit difficult. Men, women, children, livestock, everything just to be reduced from the world. And yet, part of the reason that it hits us so odd is that sin doesn't hit us very hard. Is that we think, well, in some ways, it shouldn't be that big a deal. It really shouldn't matter. God takes sin very seriously. And he shows that by telling Saul, go and remove this nation from the very face of the earth. But as you may recall, King Saul decides that he knows a little bit better than God, and that he's going to keep some of the best of the worst. These are some of the worst people on the face of the earth in their sinfulness and heinousness towards God. And Saul is going to, he's taking the analogy of the drug money that's being used to build a hospital. Some of you may recognize that analogy, that there was all different times over the years where people have been involved in organized crime. Yes, but some of the money is used for good things. So it somehow comes back to justify the use and manufacture of these awful drugs or other areas of crime. The reality is that the King Saul decides that he's going to take some of the spoil of the Amalekites and do something good with it, even though God has told him not to do that. And where he relies on his own wisdom, he very quickly starts to compromise his own integrity. Listen to the interplay between him and Samuel in 1 Samuel 15 and verse 10. We pick it up there that the word of the Lord came to Samuel, saying, I regret that I have made Saul king, for he has turned back from following me and has not performed my commandments. So there's a narrative. We know what's happened. And Samuel was angry, he cried to the Lord all night. And Samuel rose early to meet Saul in the morning. And it was told Samuel that Saul came to Carmel, and behold, he set up a monument for himself and passed on and went back to Gilgal. So here's Saul, sets up a monument to himself, self-congratulations, and wants others to participate in it so they can see this monument of him. Saul is pretty sure that he's done pretty well. Verse 13 says, And Samuel came to Saul, and Saul said to him, Blessed be you to the Lord. I have performed the commandment of the Lord. So bless you, but glory be to me, because look what I've done, Samuel. He's quite sure that Samuel is going to be excited for him, isn't he? Well, verse 14, Samuel famously says, And what is this bleating of the sheep in my ears, and the lowing of the oxen that I hear? This is, of course, Samuel's way of saying, well, if you had carried out the Lord's commandments, then all of the Amalekites and all of their livestock, all of their things that they used to make a living would have been destroyed. Why am I still hearing sheep and oxen? Well, Samuel said, what then is this bleating of sheep and this lowing of the oxen? But then Saul answers him in verse 15. They brought them from the Amalekites, for the people spared the best of the sheep and of the oxen to sacrifice to the Lord, and the rest we have devoted to destruction. Do you hear the nonsense? So, builds a monument to himself, because I've done this, claims in front of the judge of God, Samuel, yes, I've kept the Lord's commandment. Samuel starts to question him, just as, so, why does it not seem like you did it? And Saul immediately says, well, it's not my fault, it's the people's. See, it says that they brought them from the Amalekites, for the people spared. But there's a little bit of redeeming quality, he figures. Spared the best of the sheep and the oxen, and to sacrifice to the Lord. So it's not like we wanted them for ourselves, but we wanted to sacrifice them to the Lord. So there's a little bit of redeeming value in my disobedience here. Oh, and by the way, and the rest we devoted to destruction. So they did wrong, but the kind of destruction that God told us to do, then he'll include himself back in it again. Do you not see how easy it is, brothers and sisters, to start to shave the edge off the truth of what actually happened? In self-defense, in self-protection, I just cannot commit myself to the care and comfort and safety of the Lord. I cannot feel safe in the arms of Jesus. I've got to come up with an explanation and somehow seek to justify my own sin. It just hits home too easily, doesn't it? Well, then Samuel said to Saul, "Stop. I will tell you what the Lord said to me this night." It's as if Saul is going to begin to have this conversation. Samuel's just like, time out, man. Stop it. Stop it. Stop making it worse for yourself. Stop adding lies and lack of integrity and tale-bearing and gossip and slander because you're going to bring these other people into it and they're the problem. Samuel just, look, stop it. Just stop making it worse for yourself. God's already told me what happened. He says in verse 17, Samuel said, "Though you are little in your own eyes, are you not the head of the tribes of Israel? The Lord appointed you king over Israel." And when I was listening to that, I have the Bible podcast that I was listening to those words, when it said, though you are little in your own eyes, is there not some sense there that Saul still has seen himself partly rightly with a level of humility? Though you're small in your own eyes, are you not the head of all the tribes of Israel? That he started out right. I mean, when you look back at the account of how Saul became king, he wasn't looking to be king. He didn't think he should. He wasn't expecting this. Other people thought he would make a great king. His stature and his good looks and his abilities. But Saul never thought of himself that he could be the king, and saw himself as small and humble and lowly before the Lord. And Samuel reminds him of that. But the Lord sent you on a mission and said, go devote to destruction the sinners, the Amalekites, and fight against them until they are consumed. Why then did you not obey the voice of the Lord? Why did you pounce on the spoil and do what was evil in the sight of the Lord? He just lays it right out for him. And Saul said to Samuel, I have obeyed the voice of the Lord. Like, okay, look, you were on your way. You're moving in the right direction. I'm reminding you of how you saw yourself rightly. And here's the issue. And Saul just can't let it go. I have obeyed the voice of the Lord, he says. I have gone on the mission on which the Lord sent me. So let me start to tell you where I did the things that were correct. I've obeyed the voice of the Lord. I have gone on the mission. I brought back Agag, the king of the Amalekites. I have devoted the Amalekites to destruction. But the people took of the spoil, the sheep and the oxen, the best of the things devoted to destruction, to sacrifice to the Lord your God. Lord, your God. Do you notice how he starts to push away even? It was my idea. Your God wanted to do it this way, Samuel. You know, I'm not sure that I'm buying all of this. I'm not sure that I'm in with this group here. He says that he has brought Agag, the king of the Amalekites. Who ever told you to do that? You were to destroy them. And I've devoted the Amalekites to destruction. Well, a lot of them you have. But then the people brought. Again, he brings it back to the people. And now it's even the people who devoted these things to destruction for sacrifice. He was taking ownership of it earlier. And now he's even moving away from that. Dear friends at Downsview Baptist Church, just see this horrendous example of a lack of integrity, of speaking what's true, of keeping to what's true, of seeking self-protection to shuffle it off to someone else. This weekend, dear friends, would our lives be marked by people, marked as people who are committed to reality, that we don't slip up, that we don't color over, that we don't seek to deceive by kind of sort of saying something that's almost right. Think about the way some of us are going to get around the restrictions. Think about how we're going to just, it's okay because, and I don't think it's so bad, and I don't think the government has the right, and I'm really not doing that big a deal, and I'm basically obeying. You know how that can happen? We're so susceptible to kidding ourselves in the Lord Jesus Christ. Do you remember his words? Sanctify them by thy truth. Thy word is truth. And where we have the truth, Jesus says, it will set us free. Free from the captivity and bondage of lies that we invent and catch ourselves in such these webs of a lack of integrity. Brothers and sisters, may that not be our reality. May it not be what people see of us. May it not be what we reflect back to God. Let us be people of the book of truth. Live in light and open our mouths and live in light of reality, how it really is, how it's really true, and find ourselves safe in the arms of Jesus because of that very fact. Cheers, friends.